I'd like to begin by asking you to think back to when you were at high school. Did you spend half of your classes staring out the window? Did you wear your skirt above regulation length? Did you undo your top button and loosen your tie to try and be cool? Would you have been the sort of student who would have adhered strictly to the rules? Or would you have, say, worn a mask, which we're asking kids to do now, incorrectly as a way of rebelling, as only teens can? Because masks are now mandatory in most situations in our high schools, which might be a problem for anxious students or asthmatic students who maybe think of wearing masks as quite intimidating or a little bit scary. 1300 222 891. I'd love to talk to you if you're a student or a high school teacher about how you think this might go. Obviously, there's going to need to be an education campaign. Teachers have something else to enforce. And also, how do you think this might affect the ability of teachers to educate students? There's someone who's written about this, and then I'm going to talk to a couple of teachers as well. And if you're a teacher, 1300 222 891. David Roy is a lecturer in education at the University of Newcastle, and he's written about masks and education. He joins me now. Welcome, David.
Hello, Jules. Good to be here.
Now, masks in high schools, it's been rolled out in Victoria, hasn't it? And also in parts of the UK?
Yep, and in Malaysia and in parts of the US and actually quite a few South Asian countries as well. So it's not an unusual phenomenon.
How have kids in those kind of jurisdictions adhered to the rules? Have they taken it seriously?
Yeah, that's the amazing thing from what we've seen is that kids will break rules. I mean, I was probably one of the major breaker rulers in my school, but when it comes to health, kids tend to do the exact opposite because they actually do have a sense of community. They do have a sense of well-being, and a lot of kids have been really very concerned about COVID and are more aware of the potential impact on young people that the new Delta variants and others, beta variants, etc., can have on young people. So what we've found in a lot of those places that have been mandating this, that it's actually working really well. And it isn't as bad as people kind of want to create a fear of.
Do some kids react badly to it, David? I mean, some kids are just naturally rebellious, but other kids, do they get a bit anxious? Do teachers have to kind of educate their students that, look, this is, nothing particularly to worry about, it's just keeping us safe?
I think for some kids, the covering of your face will be stressful. We find that when we just use masks within the classroom, which is also part of my research within, say, a drama classroom. And it's about always, for all teachers, is to create an environment of safety. We have to make sure that kids feel safe before we can teach them in any way. And this is just part of that, to make them realise that they can breathe. There's air coming in and out from the sides. That yes, you can't see maybe the mouth and the nose, and we rely a great deal on those kind of facial expression areas to communicate. So as teachers, we have to encourage kids to do certain things to feel in communication with each other, to feel less anxious. And it's all about creating that sense of safety first and reassurance and that kind of relationship that teachers have with kids before we then move on to the learning aspect.
Well, let's move on to the learning aspect, David. Can teachers effectively educate children with half their face covered?
Well, if we actually look at the rules that have come out of South Australia, that when direct teaching, teachers don't have to wear a mask. They can actually take their mask off for that moment of direct teaching when they're talking to a class. Now, for those teachers who've got good articulation, clarity of speech, when they have volume, then the mask will maybe not be an issue. We would say to them that exaggerate your eyes and their movements, exaggerate your shoulders and your hands and gestures, because those will also communicate ideas as well as the words. One of the things that has also been, that we know works, and particularly for thinking of children who are maybe hard of hearing or are deaf, is to have more items up on the the pixel screen. It used to be the chalkboard, and then it became now it's the pixelated board with words on it written that are repeating what you're trying to say. So if you can do some preparation beforehand and type things up, then there's also that written form of communication for kids. But again, teachers don't have to wear masks when they're directly speaking and teaching.
You're listening to David Roy. He's a lecturer in education at the University of Newcastle, and we're discussing the new rules around high schools in Adelaide requiring children above the age of 12, I believe, in high school to wear masks, and teachers to wear masks in certain situations when they're allowed to take them off for the benefit of education, but they're encouraging high schools to be full of masks. Susan McLean joins me now. She's a cyber security educator, a former cop, and she talks to kids a lot about cyber security, but she also understands the psychology of teens. And I was interested in asking her as to how strictly teens will adhere to rules. There's already text coming through from people who are saying, look, I'm seeing kids in shopping centres now, none of them are wearing masks. Well, they do have a day. Well, actually, no, they should be wearing masks at the moment. What am I saying? Susan McLean, welcome.
Good afternoon, Jules.
Do you think the psychology of teens, and often teens are hardwired to be rebellious, to show, kind of a cavalier attitude to safety and the rules? In your experience, I mean, you're predominantly in Victoria. Do teens tend to follow rules like this, or will this create a nightmare for teachers?
Look, it really is going to depend on the way it's rolled out, the education that goes with it, and the compliance of the group of students. What we saw in Victoria last year, because we've had secondary kids wearing masks on and off for many, many months, is that there were a high level of compliance in the classroom because the student was directly in front of the teacher. Where there was limited compliance, and this is what you'll find in South Australia, and your comments about I've seen them in the shops with no mask. If they don't think they're likely to get caught or get into trouble, then they're less likely to behave in a certain way, and that goes across the board. So what we found in Victoria is schools every day were being inundated with photos of their students in uniform taken on the bus, the tram and the train without masks on. Here are a group of your kids on the train and they're not wearing their masks. So within the school environment, there was compliance and it wasn't a huge issue, but we certainly saw students as well as a range of other people not following the mask rules when they were on public transport, because for a period of time we had it on public transport only.
Well, we have masks.
Without masks.
We have a mask requirement on public transports as well. Susan, is that because children, when they're out, when authority figures can't see them, are much more sensitive to their peer group, and if they see their peers not wearing masks, they don't want to be the odd one out and get teased?
I think that's exactly correct, and it gets down to if you can get away with it and there's no consequences for the actions, why not do it? So they probably know if they wander around shopping mall, is the security guard going to come up to them? Well, probably not. If they do, they can run away. The chances of them getting into trouble or caught out for their poor choices is limited. So therefore, that emboldens them, if you like, to behave in that way. And that's across the board. That's not just a mask thing.
We're talking about the requirement for high school students and a lot of teachers to wear masks in South Australian high schools, which is obviously going to be a big change. And Susan McLean is saying that the experience in Melbourne is that kids were compliant mostly in school, but out of school, there were lots of pictures and social media posts of school students not wearing their masks. And I'm pretty sure that if you're listening now and you do see school kids not wearing their masks in public, you'll probably inform us all here at ABC Radio Adelaide yourself as well. Well, let's go to a teacher who's currently standing in front of a class. Well, not right at the moment. She will be tomorrow. She's the president of the English Teachers Association in South Australia, Alison Robinson. Hi, Alison.
Hi there, Jules. How you going?
Good. Now, you've heard from David, who says that the experience in other jurisdictions is that children wear masks in school. Susan has said in Melbourne the experience is a lot of them take it off outside of school. What's your view on how this is going to play out?
Yeah, Yes, it's going to be interesting, isn't it? Because obviously we've all just found out, and I'm going, God, where the heck are my masks that I bought last year? I know they're somewhere at the bottom of my sock tray or something. Anyway, no, I think we'll be all right. The great news is that while I'm actually teaching, I won't have to wear it, because it is very hard, when you're speaking. And I agree with the importance of, for students who have difficulties with hearing, they need to be able to lip read as well. I mean, obviously have stuff up on the board as well. But, I think that's going to be helpful. I think if we all do it and we all understand why, we'll be all right. Kids generally do want to remain healthy. And I think if, we're wearing it while we're not directly teaching them, all of their peers are wearing it, I think we'll be fine. It is just another piece of school uniform, effectively. And, like I have to make them wear their ties or whatever, or they can wear a mask as well. It won't hurt them.
Do the teens that you teach take COVID-19 seriously? I mean, there's plenty of adults who get on social media don't seem to be taking it that seriously. Not many, but a vocal few.
I think much more intelligent than some adults sometimes. They're certainly more intelligent than the ones marching in Sydney and Melbourne were the other day. The students I teach are very much supportive of science and what the science is saying. And I think when we show them the importance of this and look at how quickly we've managed to come out of lockdown, I was quite depressed only a week ago thinking, gosh, this is Delta, this could be a disaster. Here we are back in a week. That's fabulous. We because we've done the right thing, we're going to be back face to face. And I think if we keep doing the right thing with masks, and our students will understand that, it'll work. But we have to show that commitment and that logic. And then students, they're generally good, intelligent people who want to do the right thing. You always get some teenagers who want to rebel, but hey,
yes,
they'll be surrounded by others who are doing the right thing.
That's good to hear, Alison Robertson. Thanks for your thoughts on this. Also to Susan McLean. She's a cybersecurity educator, a former cop. And David Roy, we began with him. He's a lecturer in education at the University of Newcastle. And on masks, we were just talking about high schools and masks. After 5 today, I'll be talking to SA Health, their Deputy Chief Public Health Officer, Dr. Emily Kirkpatrick, and she'll be answering your questions about wearing masks in general life, because these little things are going to be a big part of our lives going forward, especially, you would imagine, during the winter months. So if you have a question about fogging up your glasses, or how do I get an exemption, or what to do if I forget my mask, if you have any of those questions, no stupid questions when we get onto these very important topics, feel free to call or text in after 5, and I'll be joined by SA Health, who will try and answer as many as they can.